All right. So in this part, we are going to introduce some key concepts in modern software programming. Actually, these concepts have existed already a few decades ago, but for electronics engineers, these are not quite being discussed or given much attention. That's why we included here this in this part we are going to at least introduce them to you. Right? For those who are into programming already, or for especially for IT people, uh, you I believe you already know this because these are essential programming concepts that you have to understand first before you can create your actual codes. Okay? So first let's start by understanding what data structures are are basically all about. Okay. So it says here, data structures are a way of organizing the data so that it can be used efficiently in terms of both space and time. It is a set of algorithms that can be used in any programming language to structure the data in the memory. So a very basic example for that is this data structure list, okay, which is under the non-primitive. When we say non-primitive, they are not as is, okay? These are data structures that we build, okay? Of course, using the syntax of the programming. By the way, here we are more on the Python um, um, context. All right. So list is one of the most commonly used data structures, especially for beginners. And it is a non-primitive because it's not readily available. Okay, so it is something that we build. Those that are readily available are called primitive, and uh, common examples for them are integers, floats, characters, and pointers. Okay, so the list could be a linear or a non-linear, and when we say a linear list, that's either a stack or a queue, and we're going to talk about that in a while. Non-linear lists are normally in the form of graphs and trees. Okay, aside from lists, we also have arrays and files. Now, for example, lists. For example, you have three variables for your or three parameters for your function. So if we input them one by one, function variable value for variable one, value for variable two, and value for variable three, then it could be more burdensome to the user or it may cause um more delays. Okay? But if the user can input just once, okay, for all the data that we need. Okay. So, for example, if you have 100 variables, then you can actually do that in a list. Okay. Just one enter and you have 100 data values already. Okay. So, list. Instead of putting them one by one, we can actually put them as a list. Okay. One string of data or one sequence of data. Okay. Um, Now in the linear lists, we have the stack and queue, while on the nonlinear we have the trees and graphs. Okay, to make it to explain it very quickly, just remember that stack is the first in, first out. Okay, so first in, first in stack we have the term push and pop. So whenever we add data, for example, we have this list. Whenever we add data, okay, it is stack is the last in, first out. So just like our Pringles. Okay, so imagine this is a Pringle can. Okay, so the first piece, okay, will be the last one that gets out, right? So first in, LIFO, last in, first out. So in this case, this data is the last one to get in. Okay. So since it is using a stack um approach, of your linear list, then it will also be the first one that gets out, right? Common example of this one, apps that use this approach is our features of apps that use this approach is um, our FB notifications and our Messenger inbox. Okay, the newest ones are the ones that being listed first. Okay, they are the ones that appear first. Okay, so that's stack. While queue are just like a literal queue. So whoever goes in first in the line will be the first one to be served. Okay, whoever goes in whoever the first one to go first to the counter is the one that being served first. Okay, and of course the one that gets out first. So first in, first out, first come, first serve. Right? That's queue. Right? That's for the linear. And for the nonlinear, we have the trees. So these are more complicated lists because they branch out. Okay? The main difference between the tree and graph, just remember that all trees are graphs, but not all graphs are trees. Because as you can see, trees don't have a repeating part or a loop. Okay? So it just branches out in one direction, while graphs can have loops. Okay, it can branch out in any direction, right? Okay, we will not discuss this further. This is just introduce the terms because sometimes when you are working on your code, for example, you have downloaded an existing code, or maybe you are exploring a certain libraries. So these terminologies can may pop out. So at least you now have basic understanding on these terms, right? And just take note that using the right data structures can significantly help your system become as efficient as possible. Okay, so it's all about efficiency. We choose the right data structure, we structure them appropriately so that they can be as efficient as possible. Okay, now same thing with algorithms. And when we say algorithm, we basically refer to a finite set of instructions or logic written in order to perform a certain predefined task. It is not the complete code or program, it is just the core logic or solution of a problem, which can be expressed either as an informal high-level description as pseudocode or using a flowchart. So when we say algorithm, we basically express that or let others know our algorithm by giving them or by showing them our pseudocode or our flowchart. So we have an example here of a pseudocode. So it looks like a code, but not really a code. It's more like an English statement that has been minimized, okay, or shortened, right? So they are just like shortcut sentences, right? That looks like a code. Okay, so for example, if you want to find the sum of five numbers, the algorithm could be something like this. We initialize it first, and then we have we allow the user to enter the value of n, and then out of that we find the sum, and then assign to sum and then increment by one, and then we check. We have the decision making here, so we check if it's less than five. So we decide if it's less than five, then we go to step two, go back here. But if it's not less than five, then we print the sum. Okay. So for many people, flowcharts are a better way to visualize your algorithm. So here's the equivalent flowchart for that. We start and then we state the initial values, and then we allow the user to input the value for n. And then once the user has inputted that, then it will perform these operations. Okay, it will derive the value of sum and count. Okay, now based on the value of count, we decide, okay, if it is less than 5, then we print the sum. But if it's more than 5, then we go back to this part. Okay, so they are the same actually, algorithms. And algorithms are, especially in robotics, they are in the form of functions or one or more functions. And those functions could, um, okay, in the case of OOP, we have the term methods. Okay, those functions or methods could include some mathematical models. Okay, some formula or equations. Okay. For example, how do we want the robot to behave, or how do we want this specific motor to rotate or respond to a given input? Okay, so we can control that movement or that behavior by including some equations in our algorithm. Okay, so now it is very important to be as efficient as possible because we are dealing with time and space complexity. When I say time complexity, we want um our algorithm to be as time efficient as possible, or meaning we want it to be executed in as little time as possible. Same thing with low space complexity. We want the algorithm to take as small space as possible. And we usually compare algorithms using their big O notation. And you can observe um, some algorithms are having they have O of 1, O of log n, and so on. Okay. And we have these examples of algorithms. Okay, you can observe them, right? So basically the point is to know which one is better, we can take a look at their big O notation. So you have to identify first what's their corresponding big O notation, and you can compare them. In this comparison, the best actually is our O of 1, because no matter the size of our input, okay, the the output or the processing time and the processing space required will be will still remain constant. Okay, will still be the same number. Okay. But if we cannot have an algorithm that has an notation of O of 1, then the next option for us is O log of n. um this one, O log of n. After that, we have O of n, uh this one, okay, and then the rest will follow. So first option, we have O of 1 and then O log of n. So this is our priority. So we look for algorithms that have these notations, okay, ideally. Otherwise, our code will not be efficient. All right? They take so much time to run, or they take so much space to run. Okay? Now, another very important concept that you must understand before you can explore how programming robots actually work is the OOP, or the object-oriented programming. And it's a concept that lets users create objects they want and create methods to handle those objects, such as reusing them throughout the program and manipulating them to get results. Okay, so you can observe this illustration. You can pause this video, but I want to give emphasis on the next slide. Okay, so kindly take a screenshot in 3, 2, 1. Right? And now we mentioned the terms class and objects. Remember that an object is an instance of a class or any entity that has a state and a behavior, while a class is a collection of objects and a logical entity that doesn't consume any space. For example, we have a class of Pokemons. All right. So, class of Pokemons. So, it's like a list of Pokemons. So, you list down Okay, all the Pokemons that you know. Okay, such as Pikachu. So Pikachu could be an object for that class, right? And each class, okay, all objects inside a class share attributes and methods. Okay, that means for this example, a class of Pokemon, we have the attributes, all Pokemons that we list in this class have a name, type, and health. Okay, so these are attributes, something that describe them, right? While the methods could be something that they can do or that can be done to them. So such as attack. So all Pokemons can attack, all Pokemons can dodge, all Pokemons can evolve, right? So that means an attribute is the name property of a class, while a method is a procedure associated with the class that defines the behavior of the objects that are created from the class. Okay, so um, when we say a class, when we create a class, we normally define the attributes and then the methods. So that means every time we create an object or we list an object inside that class, we are saying that since they are listed, they now have these attributes and methods. Okay, so just like in Google Form, the entire form, once you submit that form becomes an object. Okay, everything that you listed are attributes or the values for the required fields. Okay, the fields are the attributes. And then whatever the coding, the logic for that um form that you have submitted will be composed of methods. Okay. So that's it for this part. Just okay, we have some examples here. You can take a screenshot if you want. Example, we have a class of temperature decoder. So here, this is the name of our class. And then in the first part, we define the attributes. So in the same way that we define our functions. So first we have the attributes. Okay, in this case, the attribute is version. Okay, and then we have here some subclasses. Okay, it's quite um advanced already. Um, after the after 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 the what they call this, the attributes have been defined. Um, we now define the methods. So one method is the C2F. Okay, another is the code. The C2F has this parameter. Okay, the variable for that is called val, while the code method has these variables. And lastly, we have the get latest method, wherein the variable is nothing but itself only. Okay, so that's a basic example of how do we define our class. And lastly, um, when we are doing OOP or when we program in a style of OOP, we normally make use of these principles or at least follow these principles because these principles make OOP a much better approach, especially in modern software development. Okay, so abstraction or hiding internal details and showing functionality. So especially if there are some parts of your code that you don't want others to see. Okay, especially some parts are inside the libraries and they are not they cannot be instantly seen within your actual code because they are defined in the library. They are hidden there, right? Encapsulation, binding, or wrapping code and data together in a single unit. So usually if you don't, just imagine this as saving your Word file as a PDF. Okay, so you are binding your content, the content of your document. You are binding them together so that they will not be separated or they will be intact as you transfer your data or your file. Okay, and maybe when you open that file in another device, the content is still intact. Okay, so that's encapsulation. Inheritance is just like this one in our example when we have subclasses. So we have a parent class and a child class. So when we say inheritance, when an object acquires all the properties and behaviors of a parent object. So that means if we have these parameters or attributes and methods of a parent class, then the its child class can choose to inherit some of it, okay? Depending on your purpose, all right? So for example, we have a class, the parent class is shapes, okay? And then the subclass is polygons, okay? Or regular polygons. So when we say regular polygons, we have specific shapes only. And uh, the parameters or the attributes of your parent class can be adapted to that child class. Okay? And maybe you can understand it better once you see our examples. Um, Lastly, we have the polymorphism, wherein if one task is performed in different ways. So, for example, we can make use of the same method for different classes. So, for example, the class of sensor, when we say level up, I okay, we have when we use the method level up for this class, for the class of sensors, that could mean differently if your class actuator has also a method called level up. Okay, so you can use the same name of your method, but that depends on which class they belong to. Okay, so that's polymorphism. The method morphs, okay, depending on which class it belongs, right? So that's all for a very quick introduction of data structures and algorithms as well as OOP. So these two are essential. I really encourage you to explore these software development concepts, especially those um, that are directly related to robotics. Um, we will try to add or to provide some examples in the description, okay, until they are available. Okay, so that's all for now for this part. See you in the next one.